Well, hello there, and welcome back to another character tutorial series. You guys know the drill. At this point, we're going to be making a character from scratch in Blender. And yeah, we're going to be immediately starting in the sculpt mode. All of the brushes have default settings except the crease brush. As you can see here, I'm just showcasing the changes that I've made. We're going to be starting off with a UV sphere and just kind of using the grab brush to, move things around. If you're wondering about the reference in the background, you'll be able to get this reference and all the other references that I'm going to be using in this tutorial on my Discord server. There's a pinned messages in the tips and tricks channel. Feel free to join it and grab those references. I always recommend using references when you're making characters, and I decided, you know what, let me just make some references for you guys and you can use them. My workflow for the torso at the beginning is going to be just grabbing a UV sphere, moving it around, and then once I get the basic shape, I subdivide it a little bit, and then I continue, working with it, and then I remesh it so it has about 50k vertices. You can actually see the amount of vertices in the bottom right corner, along with some other stats as well. With popular demand, I've also enabled the screencast keys add-on, so you'll be able to see all of the shortcuts that I'm using. And obviously I'll be using this add-on for pretty much all my future tutorials as well. So speaking of the tutorial series, this series is going to have 7 parts. I decided to kind of split it up a little bit. So the first part, as you can see here, it's going to be sculpting the head and the body. Then the second part is going to be all about retopology. Third part is going to be all about modeling the hands and the feet. Yes, modeling. We're going to be modeling them. Fourth part is going to be modeling the hair. Fifth part is going to be modeling the outfit. Sixth part is going to be shaders and texturing and stuff like that. And the last part is going to be all about rigging and stuff. Now, speaking of add-ons, for this tutorial series, we're only going to be using free add-ons, and those are going to be Loop Tools, Node Wrangler, and Rigify. You can just enable them in Blender. They pretty much just come automatically with Blender. You don't even need to download anything. I know that in the past tutorial series, I used some add-ons that were paid, and I decided, you know what, that's not really, a smart idea. Because not everybody has, the money to pay for them, and people are just, beginners and stuff like that. So it doesn't really make sense to, use paid add-ons. So now that I've, remeshed the torso, we're gonna be doing some creasing with the crease brush. At this point, I think I start using my pen and tablet, and just start adding, some basic, detail and stuff. Usually the way I work when it comes to, creating bodies and stuff like that, I do like a basic block out. So I first start out with the torso. Then I move on to the legs, then the butt, then the shoulders, then the arms, the neck, and finally the head is usually my workflow. Just keep in mind that this tutorial series is meant for people who know the basics of Blender. And when I mean the basics, I mean people who have, at least done the donut tutorial. If you haven't done the donut tutorial, just, watch it, do it, learn the basics, the basic shortcuts of like moving around inside of Blender and, spawning in like, cubes and like, stuff like that. And then you can probably watch this tutorial series. Now, some of you might be wondering, why are the legs so far apart? Why is there this, huge gap in between them? And the actual reason is not really an anatomical reason. It's more like a workflow reason. And what I mean by that is it's actually easier to rig legs that are kind of like whatchamacallit, straight, you know? They're kind of like parallel to each other. And so it's basically because it's easier to rig them, then I decided to just, you know, make them that way. They look a little bit weird when the character's kind of like, you know, just, you know, T-posing and stuff. But because it's, you know, easier to rig them that way, I decided to just, you know, make that my workflow. Now, obviously, can you rig characters that, you know, have their legs, you know, close together, or maybe like, you know, they're split apart? Yes, you can, of course. But it's just, you know, for me, it's just easier to do it when they're like, you know, straight and, you know, parallel to each other. When it comes to the legs and the butt, they're so closely combined together that it doesn't really make sense for you to like go into too much detail when you don't have them both, you know, together. So I always recommend that, you know, when you're doing this part, always just, you know, grab the legs, you know, place them kind of approximately, then grab the butt and then place it also as well. Don't, you know, just, you know, work on the legs alone and then like add the butt much later, or vice versa, because they're so like ingrained into each other that like it doesn't really make sense for you to like work on them like separately. Now, I know in the past tutorial series I used to just use the blobber brush to create the butt, but I've decided to go back and like go to my old workflow where I just grab like a UV sphere and place it for the butt, because it's much easier to control the shapes that way, and usually at the end it kind of looks even cleaner. So as you can see here, we're just, you know, flying through these shapes really quickly, because it's, you know, when you have like a good reference, it's much easier to just like, you know, get the shapes that you want. Most of the time, people struggle to find good references, but yeah. In those rare moments where you do find one, it's just, you know, breezing through it easily. Now keep in mind that the parts between the meshes, like for example between the torso and the legs, are gonna look a little bit weird because obviously the meshes are not connected to each other. So, you know, those parts usually don't look that good. But obviously once we, you know, connect everything up and smooth it out and just, you know, connect it properly, then it's gonna look better. Now, some of you might have noticed that in the bottom left corner, there's one key that shows very often, and that's the F key. That's basically the key to like increase or decrease the size of the brush, and I do like spamming it a lot. I very often change the brush size to be either smaller or bigger. So yeah, that's just, you know, the way I work, I guess. Sometimes when you crease too much with the crease brush, you can use the pinch brush to kind of like make that crease a little bit shallower so it doesn't look as off-putting. So we're now gonna do something that I've not really done in the previous tutorial series, and we're gonna be actually making a shoulder using a cube. Usually in the past I would have just used a blob brush, but I realized that usually those shoulders look very messy, and the shapes that I got using the blob brush weren't really that good. So I decided to, start with a cube, and by doing it with a cube, I'm getting shapes that are much more precise to what I want, and also cleaner as well. But yeah, the process is very simple. Just grab a cube, add a couple of loop cuts, and then subdivide it, and obviously add a mirror. Now, not only will I be using this cube as a shoulder, but I will also be using it here for the clavicle area right here, for the bones. And also you will see me using it for the pectoral muscles right here. And I will also be using it for the back muscles as well. So it's a multi-purpose thing. I just lowered it a little bit on the strength here for the crease brush, and I'm adding these like back muscles as well. The workflow for the arm hasn't really changed much, to be honest. The only thing that's changed is that I've gotten a little bit better at like making more pleasing arms, I guess. Instead of them just being like regular, noodle arms, now they actually have a little bit of shape to them. But yeah, the actual workflow, it's pretty much the same. Except this time around, I always rotate the arms at exactly 40 degrees. Don't know exactly why 40 degrees, but that seemed like a good angle. But yeah, we basically subdivide the arm a bunch of times, move the vertices around, and then we apply those subdivisions, and then we sculpt the rest of the detail. Obviously the mask right here helps a lot to keep the shapes properly when we're, moving things around. By the way, some of you might have noticed that I've actually upgraded to a newer version of Blender. So now that means that I'm able to actually use a shortcut that I was not able to use in the past versions of Blender, which is the shortcut for, that's usually a shortcut by default is I think Alt-Q, but I changed it to I think D, which is basically allows you to switch meshes in sculpt mode. So let's say you're sculpting one mesh and you hover over a different mesh and you press D, then it's going to just switch to that mesh and now you can sculpt that new one. So now we're doing some breast shenanigans. I've enabled proportional editing right there, and you will see it in the top right corner. And that allows us to move the mesh a little bit like this with the sharp preset. Rotate it a little bit, so because boobas are not supposed to face just forward there a little bit at an angle. And then I'm just following the reference and moving them into where they're supposed to be. Obviously, right now, you don't really have to move it exactly into shape. Later on, once we combine the whole mesh together, we'll be able to more closely get the proper shape as a reference. So right now, just kind of approximate things where they're supposed to be, and then later on, we can, smooth them out. Now you might be noticing that there's no belly button for the character. I usually add belly buttons literally at the very end of the project. So yeah, there's not gonna be really a belly button here, but yeah, it's not really a big deal. You can add it later on. So one other change when it comes to my workflow is that nowadays I use an additional mesh for the neck. In the past, I would just, grab the torso and just kind of mask off the neck and just kind of extrude it upwards. But nowadays I just use a cube, or actually better yet would be a cylinder. But yeah, it just allows you to get that additional level of control. But yeah, I do definitely recommend using a cylinder. I don't know why I was using a cube here, but it is what it is. It's not really a big deal, but yeah. So here I'm just kind of lifting up the traps, moving the shoulders a little bit. Obviously right now this whole area looks a little bit weird, but later on, once we combine all the meshes, as I said earlier, we're going to smooth it out and it's going to make it look, nicer. Oh, by the way, some of you might be thinking, why are you working so fast? I thought this was going to be a tutorial, why so speedy? Well, because I believe that, I don't want to waste people's time. So my goal, as pretty much with all the other tutorial series, is to just showcase as much information as possible in a small, video, right? Now, I think this video is still going to be like almost like an hour-long video, but still, you know, it's going to showcase you everything when it comes to, you know, sculpting the head and the body in just under an hour. So I was just kind of like speed running everything to make it, you know, as fast as possible. Now, obviously, if it's too fast for you guys, you can always slow it down. The video, I mean. Alright, now we're doing the head. When it comes to the head, the workflow is actually pretty simple. Grab a UV sphere, subdivide it twice, then sculpt it so it has like a basic, you know, head shape. Obviously I'm using the reference in here, but you know, if I didn't have a reference, I would just kind of sculpt it into like a basic head shape, right? Once you get like a basic head shape done, then you're gonna remesh it to 50k vertices, and then you're gonna get the basic features of the face, like the eyes, nose, and mouth. You know, you don't need to go, you know, super like, you know, detailed into them, right? And once you get those basic features, then you're gonna grab a multi-resolution modifier and subdivide it twice, and basically at that point we're pretty much done when it comes to like, you know, altering the mesh density. We're just gonna basically sculpt until the face is done. So yeah, no more like remeshing, no more subdividing, no more any of that. That's usually my workflow. So right now we're at the stages where, you know, we kind of get like a basic, you know, head shape done, right? And soon I will remesh it. Oh, actually, I'm adding the eyeballs first. Yes, this is actually very important. Oh no, actually, it's the ears. Oh yeah, it's the ears, right? Yeah, that's also very important. Yeah, the ears basically allow you to like, these are very important because they govern where your eyes are going to be. As you can see here, the ears are pretty much like the tip of the, the tip of the ear is actually at the same height as the eyes. I was just increasing the density here because the smooth brush was like really smoothing it out a lot, and I wanted to have a little bit more higher poly stuff here for the ears. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go like super detailed for the ears right now. It's just kind of like a basic shape, but then later on we'll actually, you know, sculpt some detail for the ears. I guess somebody might be wondering, so is this my like OC or what? Is it like you know, like is it like a fan art? And to be honest, the answer is it's actually a bunch of characters from various different artists that I found interesting, and they're all like these like, you know, wood elf, you know, dark elf characters, right? And I found them all to be really interesting, and I just grabbed them all together and kind of like, you know, combine a bunch of like features. Like for example, I took like a body from one character, I took the hair from another, and I took like, you know, I don't know, design of like this other character. I just kind of like mashed it up together. So here I just did like a bunch of like renaming on the meshes before continuing. I decided to kind of cut that out because it doesn't really, you know, I'm not gonna bother you guys with just, you know, a bunch of like renaming shenanigans. But yeah, obviously in the meantime I also grabbed some eyeballs. And I highly recommend adding eyeballs pretty much immediately because they're just going to allow you to get like the basic grasp of your like features for the face. Now, a lot of people ask me, okay, denRubi, how do you actually like choose the size for your eyeballs? And to be honest, that's a really tricky question because it really depends on the character. Like if you have like a serious, maybe mature character, usually those guys have like, you know, smaller eyes because they're usually more like serious, more, you know, mature and stuff like that. Now if you're doing like a cutesy character, maybe like anime-like, usually those characters have like bigger eyes and stuff like that. So it really all depends on the actual character you're making. So for example, this character is going to be kind of more on the kind of like serious side, I guess. So usually, as you can see here, her eyes are a little bit smaller. Now let's talk about the actual face shenanigans right here. Obviously I started kind of like with digging out the eyeball socket, and then I'm using the crease brush to kind of like crease the upper eyelid there. Now here I kind of made a little bit of mistake, so guys, I don't want you to make the same mistake. I kind of dug too deep, and what I mean by that is you will see right now I'm going to try to like get the lower eyelid to appear. But because it dug so deep, I'm gonna have to like, you know, push it out. You'll see it in just a second. It's not really a big mistake, it's just that I didn't realize how much I dug with the draw sharp brush. But it's not really a big deal. You can just like, you know, whatchamacallit, dig it out, I guess. But yeah, just grabbing the nose there. It's a little bit of a wide nose, but that's fine. We'll fix it later. Right now, it's just kind of looking like a goblin. But yeah, here I'm trying to dig out to the lower eyelid. And I'm like, okay, where is it? Why is it not showing up? That's because, yeah, it's too deep. I'll show you in a second. I'll hide the eyeballs. And I'm like, what's going on here? Why is it not showing? I'm like, oh, damn, that's too deep. So basically I just grabbed the mask brush, mask off the bottom part, mask off the top part, and just kind of like pull this guy out. And then I decided to remesh it. Now I didn't change the actual remesh resolution. It's the same like remesh resolution. I just pressed Ctrl R again and just remeshed it at the same resolution. Now you will notice in the bottom right corner is that we have around, you know, 69k vertices, right? Or is it 63? Actually, I can't tell. It's so blurry here on my monitor. Anyways, but you don't have to like strictly like follow, you know, 50k, you know, vertices. Oh, we gotta do 50k. No, you can do 60, you can do 70. It's fine. It's just I kind of like go around 50, you know. And sometimes I go over, sometimes go under. So yeah. So I finally dug out the eyeballs, and I'm not gonna like, you know, try to fix them too much. I will obviously kind of crease them a little bit, you know, make them a little bit nicer and stuff. You know, kind of try to get the shape from the reference. But usually you don't want to like, you know, worry about that too much here in the you know, at the start here. You just kind of like, you know, crease it, and then you maybe like remesh it a little bit and stuff like that. And just kind of get the basic shapes there. And then later on, once we add like a multi-resolution modifier, then we'll start worrying about all the shenanigans. And I purposefully, as you can see here, when it comes to the actual eyeballs themselves, they're still shaded flat. I didn't shade them smooth. And the reason why I didn't do that is because when they're shaded flat like this, you're able to clearly see the center of the eye. And that basically allows you to kind of get like a basic grasp where you need to like, you know, create the eye shape. Once again, I'm just, you know, kind of going into orthographic mode, looking at the reference, trying to get the features, you know, how they are, like that, and yeah. She's still looking like a goblin, but you know, that's fine. So when it comes to the mouth, what I like to do is kind of dig out like a small hole for the mouth there. So I have like a little bit of a room to work with. Push out, you know, the top lip, crease it a little bit maybe even. And then for the bottom lip, I usually just like to use the inflate brush and just kind of inflate it up. And then crease it at the bottom like that. Now at one point, I think I will be actually creating like a face group or face set, I should say. And you will see what it does in just a second. So here, what I should have done to make my life a little bit easier. I didn't do it in the end, but I definitely recommend that you guys do it. You will notice that her eyes are kind of like popping a little bit, like they're just, you know, too far forward. Basically, what I would have done is I would have grabbed the UV sphere and I would have just kind of pushed the UV sphere a little bit back. So just, you know, press G and then move it, press Y, G, then Y, and then just move it a little bit backwards. Now, what I actually ended up doing is instead of like moving the eyes a little bit backwards, I just moved the whole face forward, which, I mean, it's just much more work to do. You know, I was like really stubborn. I didn't want to move the eyes, but I definitely would recommend just instead of like moving the whole face forward, I just move the whole, you know, just move only the eyes a little bit backwards, and they're not gonna be popping because you can see it in certain angles. They're just like really too much forward. But yeah. But you will slowly see me like moving the cheekbones a little bit forward, moving the jaw a little bit forward, you know, stuff like that. And it would have been just much easier to just, you know, move the eyes a little bit backwards. But yeah, this is basically the time to get all the proper like silhouettes of the face, you know, to look how they're supposed to, because later on, once we subdivide it, it's going to be much harder. Now, obviously, with the multi-resolution modifier, the benefit of it is that you can always go back to the lower subdivision levels. So technically speaking, you could, you know, you could subdivide it right now, and then, you know, if you want to fix the silhouette, you can just go back to the previous. subdiv levels, and it should be fine. But I decided, just do it properly immediately, and then then subdivide it. Now you might have noticed that like throughout the whole, sculpting here for the face, I multi-res the face multiple times, and that's totally fine, It just gives you like a nice blank, slate to work with. Obviously, remeshing it will cause like certain parts of the face to like merge together, like for example the mouth or the nose. But yeah. Oh, by the way, here's the actual face set that I mentioned earlier, which basically allows you to like quickly create masks. So usually what you do is you obviously to create a face set, you just mask the part that you want to create a face set, and at the top where it says face sets, click on that button. You will see a drop down menu and just click face sets from masked. And then to actually use it, you just press H while hovering over the face set. And this will like isolate it. And you can press Ctrl I to invert that isolation. Then you press Alt H to bring back the rest of the mesh. And that allows you to just quickly create a mask. Now here we are at the part where we multi-res it. So I just, added the multi-res modifier twice, subdivided twice, and then go sculpt mode. And basically we continue, sculpting, except now the mesh is, a little bit subdivided. It's going to be a little bit bumpy here and there, but I recommend using the crease brush and the pinch brush to just get rid of that bumpiness. I didn't really focus on certain areas. Certain areas are still bumpy, but that's fine. Once you retopologize this, all that bumpiness is going to go away. So that's fine. Now, as you can see here, I just pressed H while hovering over the face set. I then inverted it. Ctrl I to invert the mask, and then I pressed Alt H to bring back the rest of the mesh, and yeah. That's how you create face sets very easily. Or use face sets very easily. You gotta love that pinch brush. Just makes everything so nice and sharp. So as you can see, I'm just moving those cheekbones more forward and like moving the whole face a little bit more forward. Instead of just, moving the eyes a little bit backwards, but learn from my mistakes. I think at this point we're going to be connecting all the pieces of the body together. So as you can see here, I'm applying all of these modifiers, like the mirrors and the subdivisions and stuff like that. And I select all of the pieces of the body, combine them together, and then to actually, make it like only one mesh, we're gonna remesh it. But to do that, we gotta close all these holes. So there's like holes, for the arms and the legs, and then remesh it together like that. Give it a second or two. Clear out all these facets by clicking on the facets and just, making facets from visible, which is going to get rid of them. And yeah, we start smoothing things out, getting rid of these lines and stuff like that. There, I just increased the smooth brush to be maxed out because this is a pretty high poly mesh, and usually the higher poly the mesh is, the slower things get to be, smoothed out, as you can see here. So I just kind of increased the smooth brush to be like pretty high, so that, it's easier to smooth out. And then I just do a little bit of inflating there to make those creases a little bit more sharper, as you can see here. And then I smoothed them out, and now as you can see, they're a little bit, cleaner looking. So it was inflate, and then smooth it out, and then crease it again, like as you can see here. And then I change back the smooth brush to go back to, the default, like, 0.5 strength. There's going to be a lot of fixing here around the neck. Neck is looking a little bit blocky. Well, that's probably because I used a cube instead of a cylinder, but yeah. Now I'm purposefully like smoothing out the upper part of the booba, but then when it comes to the bottom part, I'm, creasing it, so, it looks nicer. Also using the inflate brush a little bit. Now in the past, what I usually would do here for the armpit is I would kind of like have this like really hard crease for the armpit, but I've decided that that looked really pretty bad, so nowadays I just kind of smooth it out, as you just saw. I guess while we're at here, some of you might be thinking, why is there like such a huge, gap between the butt cheeks? And it's actually, once again, not having to do with like anatomy. It's actually more like a technical reason. Once again, just kind of with the legs, how they were like, parallel to each other. The reason why the butt cheeks are kind of separated like that is because later on, once we retopologize the body, which is going to be the next video, by the way, we're going to be using that gap for some whatchamacallit, loops and stuff like that. So it's much easier to have like a gap there and then retopologize it. And then later on, once we finish retopology, then you can actually kind of like close those gaps, kind of like, inflate the butt cheeks a little bit and just kind of close it so it's, a little bit more natural and stuff like that. So that's why there's that gap. So once again, it's more like a technical issue and not really an anatomical reason. Certain things you change for the sake of making future things easier to do. So now we got a little bit of ear sculpting here. Once again, I'm just, using references that I found on the internet and creating a very simple, ear shape. When it comes to, doing elf, ears and stuff like that, the beauty of it is that you can pretty much do whatever, there's no established, anatomy when it comes to like, ear, elven ears and stuff like that. So there's like lots of like various examples and like, references on the internet, so you can just, create your own thing however you want. Right now it's looking a little bit blocky and like, you know, low poly and stuff like that, but I think later on I will be adding a multi-resolution modifier. That's going to, you know, gonna subdivide it a couple times, and then it's going to add a little bit more smoothness to it. And there you go. I think I only subdivided it once. Yeah, only one subdivision. I didn't go super high poly, you know. Because most of this detail that you see is actually going to be lost during the retopology process. Because there's not going to be a lot of like, you know, there's not going to be a lot of like polys for the ear. So yeah, most of the detail is going to be lost, but that's fine. At the end, it'll look pretty good, I think. Alright, we're nearing the end of the video. You know, I'm still kind of, you know, sculpting the ears here and stuff like that. And basically, I guess it's time for me to do a little bit of a shameless self-promotion. So this whole character was actually sculpted on my Twitch stream. So if you're interested in, you know, doing, you know, some 3D and you want to learn and you want to ask questions, you can always join us there and ask questions and stuff like that. People are always like worried, like, oh, you know, we don't want to interrupt your workflow and stuff like that. But I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it, my dudes. You know, ask all the questions that you need. Actually, I prefer it when people ask me on stream because it's actually much easier to answer questions there than it is like, you know, in other places and stuff. But you can also join our Discord server as well and ask questions there as well. You know, it's a place where I post all of my work. You know, so if you're interested in seeing my full portfolio, it's on my Discord server. You'll be able to find, you know, renders, turntables, animations, and stuff like that. Actually, I'm right now working on a new character that she's going to be probably animated and stuff like that. So I think that's going to be pretty cool, I think. But yeah, you can also post your own work there and ask questions. And yeah, that's pretty much it, really. The rest of the video is just me kind of like doing, you know, a little bit of shenanigans here and there. I'll leave you guys to enjoy, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, my dudes. Have a good one. Bye bye.